Oh, you have not aged well in the slightest.
Those were up, and they did.
We're smart, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new rant. And this rant is going to be for the second reboot of the characters review series, film series I am currently doing a review series on. And it is also the sixth entry in this series, and believe it or not, is the very first one of the new portrayal, and the first of, believe it or not, the MCU. And that is for none other than July 2017's Spider-Man Homecoming, the first Spider-Man film to be directed by John Watts. What's the plot of this? Well, a young Peter Parker as Spider-Man begins to navigate his newfound identity as web-slinging superhero Spider-Man. And thrilled by his experience with the Avengers, Peter returns home where he lives with his Aunt May, under the watchful eye of his new mentor Tony Stark. Peter tries to fall back into his normal daily routine, distracted by thoughts of proving himself to be more than just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But when the Vulture emerges as a new villain, everything that Peter holds important will be threatened. Yeah. So what's the plot? So how was this made? Well, originally... So because The Amazing Spider-Man 2 bombed, and all the other follow-up suite got cancelled, the November 2014 hacking of Sony's computers, emails between Sony Entertainment co-chairman Amy Pascal and President Doug Burgard were released, stating that Sony wanted Marvel Studios to produce a new trilogy of Spider-Man films with Sony, while Sony retained creative control, marketing, and distribution. And discussions between Sony and Marvel broke down, and Sony planned to proceed with its own slate of Spider-Man films. But then in February 2014, Sony and Marvel announced that they would release a new Spider-Man film with Kevin Feige and Pascal producing, and the character would first appear in an earlier Marvel Cinematic Universe film, later revealed which was Captain America Civil War. Marvel Studios would explore opportunities to integrate MCU characters into future Spider-Man films, which Sony Pictures would continue to finance, distribute, and have financial creative control over. And both studios had the ability to terminate the agreement at any point, and no money was exchanged with the deal. But then a small adjustment was made for a 2011 deal that gave Marvel full control of Spider-Man's merchandising rights, in exchange for a one-time payment of $175 million to Sony, and paying up to $35 million for each future Spider-Man film rather than receiving their previous 5% of Spider-Man film's revenue. Marvel could now reduce their $35 million payment if the co-produced film grossed more than $750 million. Marvel Studios would receive 5% of first dollar gross of the film. And Lone Star Funds also co-financed the film with Sony, besides its LSC Films Corporation deal, and covering 25% of the $175 million budget. And Columbia Pictures served as co-producer with Marvel Studios, and Sony said that Marvel Studios had an undisclosed producer fee. Marvel had even been working to add Spider-Man to the Marvel Cinematic Universe since October 2014. During the time they announced their slate of Phase 3, and Feige stated that Marvel didn't really announce anything official until it was set in stone, so they went forward with that Plan A in October, then the Plan B being that if the deal were to happen with Sony, then they would all shift. And they had been thinking about the Spider-Man film as long as they had been thinking about Phase 3. And if you heard of Matt Tolman, producers of the Amazing Spider-Man series were set to serve as executive producers, with neither director Mark Webb nor Andrew Garfield returning for the next film because their series got cancelled. Sony was reported looking for an actor younger than Garfield to play Spider-Man, and some top contenders were Logan Lerman and Dylan O'Brien, considered front-runners. Then in March 2014, Drew Goddard was being considered to write and direct the film. O'Brien said he had not been approached for the role. Goddard, who had previously attached to his Sony film based on Sinister Six, decided to decline to work on the new film as he thought he didn't really have an idea for and struggled with the idea of working on a new film after spending a year working on the Sinister Six film and being in that mindset. And while promoting Age of Ultron in 2015, that following month, Feige stated the character of Peter Parker would be around 15 to 16 years old in the film, and it would not be an origin story because there have been 2 retellings of the origin now. So they were going to take it for granted and not do that. And Parker's Uncle Ben would be referenced in the film, though, but not by name. There was even some discussions to include a direct reference to Ben when Peter was getting ready for his homecoming by the revelation his wardrobe consisting of Ben's clothes, but the writers desisted that they felt the moment veered away from Parker's character arc made Ben's death feel like a throwaway line. Then later in April, Nat Wolff, Asa Butterfield, Tom Holland, Timothy Chalamet, and Liam James were under consideration to Sony Marvel to play Spider-Man. And of course, Holland ended up getting the role. Then in May 2015, Jonathan Levi, Ted Meafy, Jason Moore, and the writing team of John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein and Jared Hess would be considered to direct the film. Of course. And the 6 were chosen out of a search of over 1,500 actors to test in front of Feige, Pascal, and the Russell brothers, directors of Cap Civil War. And Lynch would later be cast as Bruno Corelli in the Marvel Studios Disney Plus series Miss Marvel. By early June 2015, Levi and Meafy had become the favorites to direct the film, while Daly, Goldstein, and John Watts were in consideration, while Feige and Pascal narrowed the actors considered for Holland and Rowe, with both screen testing to Downey again, and Holland also tested with Evans, who plays Rogers in the MCU. And then around June 23rd, Marvel and Sony announced that Holland would star as Spider-Man and that Watts would direct the film, and the Russells were pretty vocal about who they wanted for the part, pushing to cast an actor close to the age of Peter Parker to differentiate from the previous portrayals. They even praised Holland for having a dancing gymnastics background. Watts also was able to read the Civil War script and talk with the Russells and was on set for filming the Spider-Man scenes in that film. And were able to see what they were doing with it and provide ideas about all that, including what Parker's bedroom and wardrobe looked like. And then on joining the MCU and directing the film, Watts says he was excited to explore the ground level of the MCU, where older characters like the Avengers exist but only have been depicted in previous films at the penthouse level of the Marvel world. So yeah, after the film was shot and marketed, Spider-Man Homecoming premiered in Hollywood on June 28, 2017, and was released in the United States on July 7, 2017, as part of Phase 3 of the MCU. So, when it comes to box office, Spider-Man Homecoming grossed over $880 million worldwide, becoming the second most successful Spider-Man film and the 6th highest grossing film in 2017. And with critics, it received some not really that deserved praise from critics, mainly for the light tone, its focus on Parker's high school life, and the performances, particularly of Holland and Keaton. And of course we had 2 sequels, Far From Home and No Way Home, in the years that followed. And we're going to have a new trilogy of films from Sony Marvel Studios in development. Now, as for my reaction, well, I did used to like this movie the first time I saw it, but every time I've rewatched this movie, I felt like my score just got lower and lower as the years progressed to the point where it just became mediocre. Well, I rewatched it this week for my review, and well, you know why I said The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the worst Spider-Man film? And then, of course, I rewatched that, and it's not so bad anymore. Still not good, but not as bad as I once thought it was. Same cannot be said for this movie. You know how I say this movie gets worse and worse each time I rewatch it? This movie might officially now have to be the #1 worst Spider-Man movie ever made. Sorry guys, but I have to agree with some haters. This movie is probably the most overrated movie of the MCU. Without a doubt. And easily the most overrated Spider-Man movie of all time. Like, this is not your father's Spider-Man. Like, nor your father's Peter Parker. This is not Stan Lee's or Steve Ditko's Spider-Man either. Although Stan does make us expect a cameo. And stuff. And this is just not Spider-Man at all. This does not feel like Spider-Man. At all. And this sure as hell is not anyone's Aunt May. Because Aunt May is not supposed to be this young, attractive chick. At all. Come on already. I cannot accept a Peter Parker who's not capable of just making his own suit like every other Peter Parker does. I cannot accept a Peter Parker who is so on of any other superhero as this one is an off Tony Stark. They cannot accept a Peter Parker as a pudgy sidekick. There's no Jacob Johnson, no Daily Bugle, no Oscorp. Why did Marvel Studios fail to get to remake so many of the basic elements of Peter's story? Like the leading Ditko creation was successful. Sure. I mean, yes, Michael Keaton does do a great job as the Vulture. I will admit that. And the effects are decent as they should be. But it's not much. This will clearly only happen because fans were all unhappy about the Amazing Spider-Man 2. They're like, we want it going back to Marvel. Give Spider-Man back to Marvel. So, now, it was nice to definitely see Spider-Man team up with other Marvel heroes in Civil War, like a lot of people were praying for to see and dreaming to see finally happen. And we couldn't wait to see how they would do Spider-Man for the rest of the MCU ever since Civil War. When they heard the film next year would be a solo Spider-Man film, couldn't wait to see where this go. But maybe this is the case. To be careful what you wish for, because despite Marvel providing creative input, this feels like the least Spider-Man movie at all. You want to know what this should have been called? This should have been called Iron Boy Jr. Just not a robot suit, a more rubber-like suit with all the same tech as Iron Man's suit, and a female Jarvis called Karen. Spider-Man's suit's literally provided by Tony Stark, and aside from not being able to fly, it works pretty much the same as his own suit. It has a similar heads-up display, array of weapons to select from, its own attachable drone, and most of its equivalent to Jarvis, which I've already mentioned. Speaking of that, this female version of Jarvis Karen is literally voiced by Paul Bettany's real-life wife, Jennifer Connelly, so that's kind of an irony. It just does not feel like I'm watching Spider-Man with all these gadgets. I was hoping maybe towards the end that maybe when I first saw this, maybe this was on purpose, so when he was stripped of them, he would rely on his own ability, but no. It's not what it'd be, and he just gets that suit back anyway. And the film just tries way too hard to be funny and cool, with throwbacks to some 80s John Hughes films, and in case you don't really get that, one even has a TV randomly showing the same John Hughes film it's paying homage to, very meta, hey? And when Peter Parker's best friend wears a Spider-Man mask, it seems funny, right? No, it's not. The constant attempts at humor here did stop the film at any tension. Michael Keaton was great as the Vulture. Yes. But his Vulture could have been much better, and he just feels wasted. People can say Spider-Man 3 is bad, people can say The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is bad, but those films don't really bore me, but Spider-Man 3 did not bore me to death or make me yawn watching. The opening fight in Spider-Man 3 with Harry Osborn is far more exciting than any encounters Spider-Man has with the Vulture here. The Vulture's a flying villain, so that should set up some vertigo, including aerial battles through and over the city, but the best confrontation they have here is sitting in a car before going to a prom dance. And Spider-Man himself, in this movie, Spider-Man just straight up causes problems. This whole movie. He himself just seems to be the cause of his own problems. He's the most accident-prone superhero version of Mr. Magoo. This film he just manages to indirectly blow up the Washington Monument, tear a ship in half and crash a plane into a beach, taking a fairground marathon, and possibly killing dog walkers taking a stroll by the sea. And even, he stupidly even leaves his own backpack to get stolen in one part. And even Happy Hogan literally considers that not responsible. In fact, they seemingly ruined Spider-Man for a while after this film. In this whole movie, his suit, on the head part, mask part of his suit, it should have the word asshole written on the head of his mask. Because in this movie, he's literally just this unlikable brat because he's always going against Tony's orders, endangering loads of people instead of properly helping them, and thinks he deserves to be an Avenger in spite of his arrogance. Most of the movies, I want to be ready to join the Avengers. When do we get in our mission? No, you gotta earn that shit. You gotta earn that. You don't just get to have it right away just because of Civil War. You gotta actually earn that shit. You gotta actually be ready to take on all the responsibilities of being one. One mission doesn't automatically, one little assistance in a side mission in Civil War doesn't automatically make you an Avenger. There's no sense of awe in this film. Like, none of the epic and Disney web-splitting action we saw back in the Sam Raimi films or Mark Webb films, the action scenes here are just lackluster and it ends in messy and scrappy CGI final plane, which somehow both Spider-Man and the Vulture survive crashing and exploding on impact, and the film even just feels cheap too. Apparently it's supposed to be a $175 million budget film. It doesn't feel anything like that, and it's hard to say why, but it looks and feels like a children's flick. Was it the director? Hard to say, but the best part of this film was the aforementioned standoff between Toombs and Parker in the car, kind of which shows through the director's horror credentials. The film needed more of this to generate tension and threat of our hero to come through. Sam Raimi's horror skills showed through on his films with what bruising fistfight between Goblin and Spider-Man, the hospital in Spider-Man 1, the hospital scene in Spider-Man 2, all scary, brutal, and brilliant. It's such a shame we don't have these kind of scenes anymore. Because in 2010s, everything needed to be so lighthearted. Every super movie needed to be so lighthearted during this era. You want to know what's worse here? Character flanderizations. And because some of the character flanderizations here are just the worst. Yes, we do have MJ back. Not the Mary Jane one, though. No. Now we have a different one. This new MJ is now called Michelle Jones. And unlike in the follow-ups to this movie, this version of MJ is just annoying and pointless in this whole movie because literally all her scenes are just her making unfunny insults. Most of the time, she's on screen. Thankfully, Zendaya was at least better in later films after this, like The Greatest Showman and the new Dune films. But Michelle Jones just did not need to be in this film. The only time she should have been in this whole film was the very last scene, the very final scene where they're announcing a new decathlon member. That should have been her only scene in the whole movie. And she should have not played a role till Far From Home. And you have Flash Thompson in this film. Yes, you still have a Flash Thompson. Not the jerk jock Flash Thompson. No. Now, this version, apparently the MCU thinks Flash Thompson is this annoying stereotype that just becomes a huge head kicker in these new films because he's not this jock anymore. He's now some irritating as hell rival geek that just exists to be a rival of Peter Parker. Heck, he even comes with this gross nickname for Peter Parker, which is basically Penis Parker. Yeah, how funny is that? Yeah, I like to see, if this is PG-13, why do we have words like penis in here? And now for Aunt May, no longer the lovable older middle-aged lady she's supposed to be in the films or the 2018 video game. Now she's some apparently attractive 30-year-old chick here who doesn't even look aged at all. Then again, this is the era where attractive actresses were always miscasted in parent roles to get the more money and the more seats in the theaters. Prime example of this stupid trope being Aubrey Plaza casting in the Chucky remake. Yeah. Got casted as the unlikable version of the mom from Child's Play. Now, and Iron Man was a good part of the movie, but when it comes to Iron Man, I don't think there was any reason Iron Man even needed to be in this film at all. Yeah, he's one of the few saving graces, but do we really need Iron Man in this movie? I don't think we did. And another character that annoys me in this is easily Ned. Yeah, oh my god. I mean, yeah, sure, Ned's more likable than Peter in this whole movie, but the reason why he annoys me is comedy is what really ruins his character. He's just not funny as a comic relief. Okay? No, his comedy just doesn't work. And heck, like, one of his jokes is that where he's trying to hide his call of Spider-Man, he literally says that he's looking at porn. Like, first you have the word penis, and then you have a porn joke in here. Do we really need to have a porn joke in a Spider-Man movie? Like, even halfway through the movie, this whole Spider-Man's a mess. Yeah, he's human, so he makes mistakes, he's God, but it's still ridiculous. I don't get why the folks of this Marvel Universe were impressed with the YouTube Spider-Man. Like, and Captain America's fitness program, give me a fucking break. Like, this Spider-Man just feels like a loser that no one can depend on, and the same goes for Peter Parker. Like, all this guy did was get bit by a radioactive spider off-screen, and is apparently nothing without the suit that Tony made for him. And Homecoming, again, well, pfft. Yeah. This is all like the... And yeah. And there's another character named Liz, who just exists to be Peter's date and gets no development. That is all, and they're never really truly boyfriend and girlfriend. This just has to be said because when Peter was fighting the Vulture guy, Peter was like, I'm fighting your girlfriend's dad during the Homecoming night. And it's like... Oh my god, like... The only thing that was interesting about her was the fact that her dad was actually the Vulture. That's the only really interesting thing about her, was that her dad was literally the Vulture. Which was quite a nice twist. I can think... Yeah. But while I do hate Captain America's little fitness thing, there is like one fitness video scenes. Like, there's one scene where in the end, when Captain America says the key to a great superhero is patience and something about being disappointed, he's not wrong there. I guess you could say he's literally summarizing the whole movie and this whole version of Spider-Man in general. Because this version of Spider-Man's just impatient and a big disappointment. Just whining over wanting to be an Avenger, not wanting to go to school. God. Like, you know, you gotta earn that. Like I've said before, you gotta earn that shit. Don't just get it because you want it. God. Sorry, guys. Like, and the almost use of the F word is kind of funny. But back to the back-wise, like, because if I had to pick my least favorite scene in this whole movie, it's where Parker finally gets disciplined. And that may seem satisfying, but the reason why is that when he gets his suit fully taken away, he doesn't really have a bit of a dick realization. No, he doesn't really seem to realize his consequences at all. It doesn't really seem to, like, agree that maybe Stark is right. Maybe he is really acting irresponsible. No. He just gets all upset over the suit getting taken away. And he's like, please don't take my suit away. That's all I have. I'm nothing without this suit. What? That's your response? When you're finally getting reprimanded for your stupidity, and your suit gets taken away as a consequence, all you're more upset about is losing your suit, and you're nothing without it? Okay. Remember Spider-Man 2 and Sam Raimi? All the other films prove that Peter Parker never needs no suit to be Spider-Man. In the Raimi films, because in the Raimi films during the fights, Raimi's version of Peter always got his suit destroyed by foes, and he still fights with the destroyed suit. Even if it shows half his face. Heck, in Spider-Man 2, he literally managed to save a kid when he had lost his powers. He managed to save a kid from a burning building without his suit at all. And this was just his normal Peter Parker self. No suit, no powers, just saved a kid from a burning building. He didn't need no suit for that. At all. And even like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man realizes that Spider-Man's not just a suit either in his films. So why does this Peter need a suit just to be something? Honestly, to me, that just makes this version of Peter just seem like a complete asshole. I'm nothing without this suit. Give me a fucking break. Guys, each their own though. I know people dig this movie, but I just can't. This the way Spider-Man accent looks is just inexcusable because he's jumping around like a cartoon, the most boring web sling they've ever put in a screen. The other movies did it so, like, this one just had to ignore it, and despite being a great opportunity for some great visuals, and the CGI is not even great. The CGI is really terrible in this. Or basically all it seems with Spider-Man in this Tony Stark ripoff suit. It looks like he just isn't there. And I know that he doesn't look great, so I know that, like, yeah, the suit wasn't that great in Civil War either, but even he was way more likable in the Civil War role. And I figured them not having a suit on set was them trying to keep it a secret or something. Like, I don't know why. Like, at the very least, they should have learned from their mistake while he was a minor character, rather than just repeat it to a full-length Spider-Man movie. They could have had the time to, like, improve him, have him make his own suit, just save the Iron Man knockoff suits for his Avengers team-ups, and that's it. Only could have saved the Iron crap for the Avengers movies. That only should have been the time they used those suits. His own standalone movies here in the MCU, those should have been his own suit. Period. And left all the Iron stuff out. Like, I don't know how they did it or whether or not CGI was the problem, but either way, it looks really bad. And our Marvel movies should know better. And that scene of Tony Stark talking to Spider-Man in the building just looked horrible anyway. Because it looked like a bad green screen effect, but surely they couldn't get that right. Like, enough about how the movie looked, though. But, despite me ranting on this movie, I do have some good qualities with this movie. First off, I think Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland do some great jokes playing their characters, and the interactions they had were somewhat nice to see. I don't agree with them being father and son-like duo, but it was still nice to see anyway. And the main thing I did like about this movie is Michael Keaton's Vulture. It was definitely nice to see Michael Keaton come back in a comic book movie role again, and actually see the Vulture in a movie role as well. Especially his first comic book role since Batman Returns, but even Batman Returns was way better. And I do like the scene where Parker is trapped in the rubble, and he remembers Tony's scolding quote where he says if he's nothing without that suit that he doesn't deserve it. That scene alone is probably the only time this movie feels actually Spider-Man. Him being trapped in the rubble escaping is the only time they actually try to act like a Spider-Man movie. Why couldn't the rest of the movie have this tone? This movie probably would have been better, like, that scene actually felt like it would belong in a Spider-Man movie. And like I did mention, while Ned is a little annoying, he's probably the most likable of all the high school characters of this movie. That's all I'm gonna say. Annoying comic relief, but only likable of the high schoolers. But those sadly do not make this movie good. I'm sorry guys, but I would rather be honest in my reviews than just randomly lie and just have the same opinions as everybody else. Okay? And I know we did used to like it, but sometimes whenever you like a certain movie, sometimes it's not going to always stay good, and sometimes it could age horribly. A lot of great films can age horribly. It's what I've learned. Okay? Any film can age bad. So, in the end, I would strongly avoid Homecoming like the plague if you don't want to see some Iron Boy Jr. knockoff instead of an actual Spider-Man, because despite some nice moments, this is easily the worst Spider-Man movie to me in my opinion, and it only just gets worse and worse on rewatches each time. Anyways, that's it for my review of Spider-Man Homecoming. If you're wondering how I'm going to rank Spider-Man Homecoming, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you were looking for a perfect new Spider-Man after Amazing Spider-Man 2, you're not going to get that here, so I would just skip this and go straight to Spider-Verse or Far From Home instead, because those are better movies than this film. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Spider-Man Homecoming, I'm going to give Spider-Man Homecoming a 4.5 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for Spider-Man Homecoming. And that wraps up the Spider-Man review series for this week. So, we're now on to 3 more Spider-Man movies for the review series, and we'll finally be done. And we all know, though, what those 3 are going to be. And then we'll be all caught up and ready for Across the Spider-Verse when it hits theaters the very first few days of June. Finally going to come out, and I hope it ends up being good. So it better be worth it. Until then, guys, that'll be it for this rant. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.